If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to Downfall Network for more cool content.
What's up, everyone? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
I'm Shredlord.
And we have an album review for you. So we haven't touched on prog metal in a little while, and this week we have a prog release from Caligula's Horse with their new album, Rise Radiant. And this comes out on Inside Out Music on the 22nd of May. This is the band's 5th release, and these guys formed in Queensland, Australia in 2011. I was a big fan of their last album, In Contact. That came out in 2017, I believe, and if we were doing videos back then, that might have been on a year-end list for me. I thought that was a pretty incredible prog album.
It had some thunder from down under, mate, before the dingo ate my baby wallaby.
Yeah, or like a venomous snake or something like that. Everything's out to murder you in that country. So, you know, we're glad the prog bands survive. That's the main thing.
Spiders are f***ing huge over there.
Yeah,
biggest f***ing Cocker Spaniels. So this album opens up with The Tempest. I believe this was their lead-off single, and right away we're pretty much greeted to Dream Theater, Between the Buried and Me, you know, a lot of genty moments. Pretty much kind of standard fare for these guys in terms of their overall sound. It's definitely a blend of modern prog and old school prog, like definitely some 70s era stuff, which definitely comes up on this album. It's very straightforward. In fact, the next track follows that even more suit. Almost kind of sounds like a radio single with Slow Violence. They did a music video for it too. And I have to say, this sounds very safe. Honestly, it sounded way more adventurous, and I think notably heavier just in terms of production on the last album too. And we're probably going to compare this a lot to previous albums as well.
The cool thing about this is you can tell that they really draw from some of the old 70s prog as far as some vocal harmony type stuff, as far as ideas for songwriting, things like that. To me though, I wish it was executed a little bit differently, and I know that's just my own personal taste. Vocally, they could have done a lot with the harmonies and stuff, because when I think of prog rock, one of the most standout things to me when I think of like 70s prog rock is you have some of the most killer f***ing vocal harmonies that you'll ever hear. And I wish there was a little bit more of that on this album. So tracks like Autumn and even The Descent had some really nice progressions and stuff like that, but man, I feel an opportunity was missed to do some really killer vocal harmonies.
Yeah. I liked Salt. Salt was an interesting song in terms of them just really stepping back in the Wayback Machine and really going for stuff more like Yes, Gentle Giant, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Though it definitely lacked heaviness, and that was kind of an issue on this album where In Contact definitely balanced out the heavier moments and the softer moments.
There weren't a lot of heavy moments going on, which, okay, fine, but if you're not going to do that, at least bring some more elements into the music, and there really wasn't.
Or like a sense of urgency or intensity. And there's a lot of moments in here that really just miss that. Autumn, while I like the fact that it is a really cool, somber note, it's very kind of melancholy across the board, it has this really slow build to it, which I thought was really cool, and was kind of waiting for this big, grand crescendo. And you kind of get that vocally, because they throw in some really cool vocal harmonies on that one. But it never really kind of reaches this giant crescendo, like this huge moment at the end you were kind of waiting for. And it really doesn't transition well into the last track, The Ascent, which is notably more intense and the longest track on here.
There's definitely heavy moments on this album, don't get us wrong, and the heavy moments are very cool, but a lot of the heavy moments sound very similar.
Yes.
There's a lot of repetitive syncopated riffs, a lot of repetitive palm mute type stuff.
Well, the palm mutes are almost exactly the same on most songs. It's the same pattern.
It's the pulse of the album.
Yeah.
I would say they went to the palm muted well way too often. It's pretty much on almost every track. I think Autumn is a little bit more bereft of it, and their little interlude, Resonate, which I was kind of thrown off by. It's just a soft vocal thing with some electronic drum loops, and really it's more like Peter Gabriel or Deftones or Sade.
I asked the question, did Billie Eilish write this?
And
I'm just asking.
His vocals are very breathy. I don't blame you for asking that one.
There's too much slow on this album. Too much mellow for a 50-minute album.
There's nothing wrong with mellow, but,
but it needs to be done right.
It was dragging a little bit, right?
Yeah.
From a guitar playing standpoint, I really enjoyed the guitarists on this album. They got some good tone going on, and there were a lot of really good leads. But the one thing I'll say about the leads that we were discussing while listening to this album was they sounded like they could have been interchangeable.
Yes.
They're very similar in a sense. And the other thing is while they did a good job of changing scales and modes when the chord changes behind them changed, I really wished at times, instead of, like, sometimes I felt it was very rushed. Like they were just in a hurry, like, oh, this is my spot, and I got to do a lead real quick, and then it's out of here. Yeah. They have a lot of the tools, and they're very talented, like, you know, accent stuff. Like they were doing little flutters, like Steve Vai and John Petrucci, and very, very Petrucci, Marco Safagli, Exvius, very fusiony type.
Exvius, I got reminded of Exvius a bunch. Yeah.
But I really think they missed an opportunity again to just like hang on a fucking note, man.
Well, right.
And throw in some vibrato and really make more of a melodic statement. Make my arm hair stand up a little bit more.
Like it had flash, but it was missing the feeling. It was missing like
it needed
soul.
a little more substance.
Yeah.
The interchangeable thing was the thing that bothered me, because you could literally switch around these leads in most of these songs, and they would generally have the same impact or, you know, no impact at all, because they just didn't seem to fit the songs. The only one that I thought it was really fitting was on Autumn, where it actually starts off a little bit slower before, you know, going to the shreddy wheelhouse.
And they took their time, and it sounded beautiful. Like there was still the awesome technical playing in there, but they slowed it down a little bit and really just let some notes ring out to give it some feel. Let your hair on your arm stand up a little bit, man. You know, guitar is a melodic instrument as well. Let it sing to you as well as kind of flash you.
Yep.
This album in particular really reminded me a lot of another Australian contemporary, Carnival. Now, Carnival is kind of an interesting mix of like more alternative rock and prog rock. And these guys were decidedly more metal before. So this is kind of an interesting shift to that. I honestly think Carnival does it a little bit better just because they've been doing it for so much longer. Now, this album does get some intense shots in the arm. Ocean's Rise, I thought, was probably the best track on here.
Yes, I will agree.
Very Toolish in the syncopation, heavier. Starts off a little slow, and I was like, oh, we're going to get greeted to another long ballad. But no, it instantly starts getting heavier, and this is just where it feels more energetic, more intense.
Like even the vocals have some power behind them for a change, because they're thin otherwise.
Very strong chorus, which I think a lot of the choruses on here are pretty strong. It's just, it lacks a lot of intensity on this, and I kind of like a little balance of moods. It's progressive. You're supposed to be encompassing a wide range of emotions here, and this really only kind of hones in on like the melancholy and the dreamy. It needs some more intense moments on there to really kind of solidify the fact that this is still a metal band.
Plus, when you have those more intense moments, it makes the slower melancholy stuff feel that way. It doesn't make it feel like it's lagging so much or just going at a very slow pace.
Overall, I think this is a decent album. It pales in comparison to their previous work, so I'll go right ahead and say that. But I still think it's good and definitely worth its merit. It's definitely a different approach for them. But overall, I'm only going to give it 3 stars, which isn't a terrible rating. I just feel a little bit let down by this because I think there was so much more in their wheelhouse and they only really stuck to what was safe.
I also give it a 3 out of 5. I liked listening to the album. It's not something that I'm probably going to listen to many more times just because it didn't grab me as much. Like you said, compared to the last album, it left me wanting a lot more that I didn't get on this album. There's a lot to like on this album, but the biggest takeaways I have from it are they played it a little too safe as far as just low-key slow, and I really, really, really wish they would have done a better job of balancing the soft and the heavy.
I'm actually going to give it 2.5 stars. First off, again, there are really nice moments on this record, but they're too few and far between. I also thought that the songwriting structure was a little bit too similar, like on every song, like except maybe Autumn, where it was almost ballad-esque. All the songs just had verse, chorus, kind of slow part, lead, bridge, and then back to the chorus. Like every song was like that. And there were heavy moments, but there weren't many heavy moments. It just seemed kind of lackluster and a little uninspired to me. So that's why it gets 2.5.
So, if you like the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. Catch you guys later.